Good afternoon, traders. This is Christian from Hertz Tribeca Trade Group, and it is Thursday, August 13th. So the week is rolling along, and doesn't it seem sometimes these weeks kind of drag on a little bit, but I think maybe because we've had so many weeks where we've had these big earnings weeks the last couple weeks and a lot of events. This week seems, knock on wood, not jinxing anything, but it seems like it's just a lot more smoother week this week and a little bit less bumpy without all these big earnings reports. I like when we start to get through earnings season because there's so much information that comes out in those couple weeks. So that's why I think to this week so far, I'll just say with the lack of events, really is feels like we're just kind of cruising through this week, and I'm surprised it's going to be Friday already tomorrow. So we'll get into today's price action and theme of the day. I would say nice trading opportunities today, but in my opinion, don't be greedy with this market because, again, if you look at the next line that I've got written down here, I've had August to September, but it really depends on the year. August to October is typically a more difficult time to trade. Again, there's nothing 100% that this kind of stuff is definite. But more often than not, August to October, sometimes, and we haven't even seen any type of pullback yet in anything, but typically we do, right? Typically, I think if you look at last year's price action, there's usually a little bit of a pullback around the time. So don't get caught off guard by that type of thing. And just like today, I don't think you have to swing for the fences. So we're going to go through a number of charts where, some of the names that we talked about in yesterday's video, kind of just the next stage that some of those names got to. One of the things that I've been talking about this week, and starting basically at the end of last week, was just having some patience with the growth names and letting them see the profit takers, basically, and the weekends come out of these names a little bit, and then to see when the buyers start coming back. Well, it started to feel like that a little bit yesterday, and I think today more so, right? And so we'll go through a couple of those names, and some of them have hit short-term resistance. So this is really where trading discipline comes into play and not being super greedy, right? Because I think many of these names, you probably, if you participated in, you had a nice winner at one point today. Now, if you let those names kind of come in a little bit, maybe you gave back some of those profits, or you may have given back a majority of those profits. And again, this is all trading technique. So let's go through a little bit of the price action. So first of all, you can see from the open, if you look at the major indices, they really didn't do much today, all in all. The SPY finished down just barely red for the day. And but you could see basically, again, this column is always that I have on my spreadsheet is percentage change from the open, right? I always like to see what happens during the overnight session versus during the cash session, 9:30 to 4 o'clock. Remember, over time, the money is made in the after hours market. The money is not made during the day, right? And if that concept is not familiar to you, there's a lot of different. You could Google that. Where's the money made? Is it made after? In regards to buying the close, and selling the open is usually where the money is made. The other way around, not so much. And there's historical studies done on this. But anyway, I don't want to get off tangent there. But in any event, once again, this session, we didn't have a big move in the after hours or intraday in terms of the overall indices. However, once again, we did have some separation with sectors. The solar stocks, just unreal. I looked at this SEDG yesterday. I didn't pull the trigger on it, but man, super strong, these solar names. And one of the things that I made a comment earlier on Twitter, and I like to kind of, sometimes when I put out something like that, it's tough to fully explain yourself. But I noticed that a lot of traders on Twitter, I always talk about the traders on Twitter. They love when people define, I think this stock's going to go from point X to point Y. And I do that for some short-term trading setups. But I think really people don't like when you just show them a chart and you say, hey, this is a really good trend, right? It doesn't get that many clicks, right? People don't like it as much. People would rather have somebody tell you, hey, it's at 52 right now and it's going to go to 55, and that's where you take your profits, right? People love that certainty. People don't love, the traders on Twitter don't love that somebody just says, hey, this is a nice chart setup and stick with the trend, right? Nobody likes that. It seems. Actually, I shouldn't say that. Less people like that. But I'll tell you, that's where the money is made. The money is not made. The majority of money is not made, hey, point X to point Y for $2, right? This is where the money is made in the big trend, right? So while that doesn't get a lot of clicks on Twitter and not a lot of love, but if you stick with these things, right? People, and I also notice a lot of traders on Twitter, they don't like when a name breaks out for some reason. This is the best thing that can happen to you. People are like, where's the resistance? Where do I take this thing off? Again, I'll say it again. The majority of the money is made is letting it ride. And then, of course, you have to have a trailing stop, right? Or you have to have some type of a sell signal. So, for instance, I'm in the solar, in my tactical portfolio, which is a trend following portfolio. I've been in the solar ETF for more than a year, I would say? No, probably about 6 months. And I'm just riding the trend. There's no reason, there's no sell signal, right? There's no reason to shake yourself out of something like this. Now, if it breaks like the 50-day moving average or something like that, or the 20-day moving average, you should always be defining where you're going to get out of a name. But, this is really nice to see this continue to make more and more new highs. Versus trying to say, oh, okay, I have these levels on my charts, like 50, 55, if you really want to take some if you're not holding for the long term, and I get that. I have one account that's more short-term trading, then I've got that longer-term trend trading account. But 55 would be a place to maybe take some money off the table. But it's not like it's going to get to that level and stop, right? So that's the beauty of stocks over time, is that the stronger stocks continue to make newer highs, right? So again, it's one of these things. The reason why I'm going into detail in this, because I just see it. I see it on Twitter. People love when you give them a price target, right? They think that you're taking the uncertainty, but really, people who are doing that, they don't really know, right? Now, my indicator helps me, right? There's definitely some levels, short-term levels, to say, hey, I can take some profits here and so forth. But I don't know when this level is going to be taken out. I have no idea. Someone asked me that the other day, which was a pretty good question, I might add. They said, hey, you posted this, and when is it supposed to hit this? I'm like, I don't know. There's no way. Nobody knows. And the sooner that you could get your head around that nobody knows, right, for when a stock is going to get a certain level, the better you're going to do, right? And I know we were talking about this earlier in the trading room about people love predictions. It doesn't matter that half the time the people who make these predictions, there's some people on Twitter that they're wrong almost all the time, but they still get the followers, right? Because they're giving like traders hope that they know. Nobody knows. All right, so let me move on. I always go off on a tangent. I apologize, but it's kind of like this is the stuff that it's funny to watch what goes on for somebody who, for somebody who's new to trading and sees, oh my God, they must know. They're giving out predictions all the time. It's all BS, guys. The best thing that you can do, in my opinion, where I've learned to make money, is just sitting in the trend. And I'll tell you, it's not easy to do. It's not easy to stay. And people always say, oh, well, that's where the easy money was made, or something to that effect. It's not easy to sit. It's one of the hardest things to do, just sit in a trend and just let it work for you and be patient, right? And realize that you're not going to catch the very top, right? That's the other big misconception. And then I'll talk about today's price action. But that's the other misconception, right? You're never going to be able to time the absolute top. You're never going to be able to time the absolute bottom either, right? As a trend trader, what you basically do is you try to capture the majority of the move, and you give up a little bit of the move at once it comes in, right? You have to get used to that if you're going to follow that philosophy. By the way, trend following by Covell. I talk about this, as well as Turtle Traders. These are great books if you want to learn a little bit more on that. Same thing with the bottom. You're not going to catch the bottom perfect. You're going to, if you're a trend trader, you're going to catch a little bit off the bottom, right? Again, it's something that you have to get a little bit comfortable with. So anyway, that's my take on what's going on with the solar stocks. Nice to see biotech get going a little bit. I actually haven't looked at a biotech chart in a few days. This is something that hasn't acted right for the last couple weeks, but we'll keep an eye on it. All right, so we'll talk a little bit about what we traded for the day. We'll talk a little bit about the names that saw option activity. But so let me start with one there's a bunch of names, right, that we could talk about. Square, because I got a lot of questions about Square. And I talked about it in yesterday's video, how I started a position after this gap was filled, right? And we've started to see this thing move up. Now, I don't know what's going to happen here, right? So you have to use a little bit of discipline. On the daily chart, we did fill this gap and we're bouncing. Now, we're either going to continue to bounce and maybe stall out someplace here, or it's going to go out to make new highs. Nobody knows this, right? But basically what we do is we trade disciplined. So we move over to the 1 hour chart. I put this trade on yesterday. So what do I do once we hit a little bit of short-term resistance? Right? I take some off here, right? We pre-plan our trade, and I said, hey, if this thing gets to bottom of value, I'll probably take some off. So I did that. Now, if the next level is probably going to be someplace in here, and I'll probably take another target. Because again, this is a pretty big value area. I don't know if this thing is going to make it all the way through, right? And then if I do take another target in here, I will still have some on for that next move higher. Right? But we don't know if this thing is gonna. I could lie to you and tell you, oh, it's definitely gonna go to 155. But I would like to. It would be a lie. I don't know. But I do know if this thing gets into value, then what was resistance will become support, and I can use that. And that's basically all that trading is, folks, is basically looking and using something like the market webs as a tool to tell you, hey, there's a little bit of resistance here. It's a good place to take your first target. And then if you're not in the name, wait for a move into value, right? And then you could use this 144 as your stop. That's all it is, guys. It's all about trading discipline. And then hopefully once this thing if it gets into value, it can make this move all the way to 155. But again, you're going to have to basically manage that appropriately, right? There's no, oh, it's definitely going to 155. There's none of that, So this is good to review, and for people who are new to trading, who think that people make predictions and they know something. They don't know anything. So next, so then it's a game of management. Let me tell you about a trade that didn't work today. Shopify, and then I'll talk about the whole trade blotter but this is another one where it's kind of the term that I've been using the last couple of days. It's kind of a little bit in no man's land. Shopify, right? It had earnings, it moved up on earnings, it kind of moved down with all the growth names getting sold off a little bit, but it's trying to figure out where it's going from here. Now the issue is, if it doesn't turn the corner, and it had a little bit of a problem here turning the corner today, but if it doesn't turn the corner, right, it's right at the point of control. The 80% rule is still in play here. So I'm looking for this thing. If it can't turn, then I'm looking to kind of buy down here. And I think I talked about this name yesterday, but I tried to put a position on today, and on this break, and it kind of, once it fell back into value, I don't want anything to do with it because it's not doing what I initially thought was going to happen. So I stopped myself out at $9.99 and live to fight another day, right? Because again, if the market wants to, decides to be weak, there's levels that this thing could definitely get to down here. So I don't know. And tomorrow, if this thing happens, you can see the new value area for tomorrow is going to be 1013. So I will set an alert at 1013, and I'll look to trade the breakout tomorrow for Shopify. And if it doesn't get there, if it kind of meanders through this value area in range for the day, then I won't touch it. And that's it. but it does look like it's trying to, like, at least on the 5 minute, to kind of turn here a little bit. So that's Shopify. Also, Fastly was another one. Fastly, a lot of traders had a discussion about this one after hours, which again, our community of traders is second to none. Some really good thoughts on Fastly, and I said, you know what, I'm going to take a shot at this. Now, how am I going to manage this one? Right? So I got into a position today in Fastly. So I'm going to take probably half the thing off at 83.50. Now, again, I'm not in a big position in this one. But just to kind of follow the exercise through, I would take some off at short-term resistance, 83.80, and then we'll see if it kind of sets up like Square possibly might do. But you could see this is good resistance, right? This is based on last week's value area. Now, it may take just some more time. These big value areas are a little bit difficult. So if this thing, chops around for the rest of the week, it may set up a better trade for next week. So again, one of those things that, we'll have to keep an eye on for Fastly. Next, Datadog. Now, Datadog was another story. Now, Datadog was a name that I traded yesterday, and I stopped myself out. Because why? It didn't do what I wanted it to do. It could not get into value yesterday. Now, today there was some rumor, people love to, who knows if there's any legitimacy to, there's a rumor about them being sought after by another firm. Who cares? 90% of these chatter rumors are false. Now, it could be that it's the 10%. We don't know. But what I do know is it gave me a tradable level, and I tried it again. I talked about this in the beginning, right? We do a pre-market session, and I went over this name, and I said, hey, whenever you're in a name and you get chopped up a little bit, sometimes traders get discouraged. Don't get discouraged. Just give it another shot, right? Paper cuts are fine. But again, you try to trade as unemotional as possible and realize it's just part of the game. So once this thing triggered, right? And whenever I decide like, hey, I don't want to hold this name because this wasn't really a stop out. It just wasn't doing what I wanted. It didn't trigger yesterday. So as soon as you get out of the trade, put an alert back. Don't get upset that the trade didn't work, right? Just go and put the alert back, which is what I did at 78. And then I got the alert and I said, hey, I'll give it another shot. And I didn't even know that there was a rumor about it. And then, of course, they start buying like momentum calls and so forth to try to get the stock going and so on and so forth. And, gave us a nice tradable level. So I do think if we flip to this one, because once the market dipped this afternoon, I put some of the position back on. And I would be looking for a move to 85.40 in that. So again, here's the trade blotter, which I haven't gone over yet. A couple of trades that I got out of was this NVIDIA trade. Also, I rolled Tesla at the end of the day. Again, it's another lesson that we talk about a lot, is that if you have a winning trade and you decide to take profits in it and you think it's still a good stock, take some of that money and put it into a new trade, right? That's called rolling out and up. I did that yesterday. Well, I didn't roll out. But I rolled up, right? So out meaning out further maturity, up means a different strike. So I took a really profitable trade, right? I was in the August 14th, 1525, 1535 call spread, and I took that off for $7, paid $3, and then I rolled it up because I thought that there might be some, further upside. So taking the profits out of the trade and putting a new trade on for 360. And then getting out of this thing at 750. Again, notice how I'm not waiting to get to $10 because the market could reverse. It seems so easy sometimes, right? Let's look at I didn't even see what Tesla did at the end of the day. But sometimes these names, like, they'll be through your upper strike and you're like, oh, I should be able to get, like, in this sense, it's a $10 wide call spread. I'm like, oh, I should definitely be able to get the $10 wide call spread. But sometimes the market comes in pretty hard and you get nothing instead of trying to get that last incremental, couple bucks, right? Sometimes it goes all the way like below what you paid for it. So it's a test of greed. And I'm okay sacrificing the 250 not for a double. Right? I got a double out of this trade on a roll on a trade that it was a roll. All right, what else? A couple other names to kind of go over. But I hope this helps, again, going over the thought process and how we do it at Tribeca Trade Group. By the way, um, as somebody asked me yesterday too, when I was talking, when they were asking me, hey, when does it get here? Or what to do next? If you're not a member, become a member. We don't charge, like, I don't charge that much to be a member, and we have a tremendous community of traders. We go, if you want a pre-market session where we go over setups, like if you're a serious trader, right? So if you want to go over pre-market setups, we have a Q&A channel where I post, any charts. I give my interpretation of charts throughout the day. So I like doing it. It's fun. And sometimes you guys, the charts that you guys request actually give me pretty good ideas too. So it's just our community of traders are fabulous. ISRG is trying to take this next leg higher. I did put on a call spread for next week in this one. We'll see if it can get out of this consolidation. I would say one of the best option trades that we've been seeing over the last week is in Merck. This Merck has been consolidating a lot, trying to move out of consolidation. Here was the trade that we saw in Merck today. Nice opening trade, January 85 calls. Notice where the 85 strike is. Up here, there's a VPOC, Virgin Point of Control, all the way up here. So that's a great trade if you're bullish this name long term. About a week ago, we also saw some positioning in this name too. So you kind of have to follow the breadcrumbs a little bit with some of this stuff, but we saw a lot of interesting trades. There was this call spread that went up, which looks like it was tied, but we did see maybe it was a few more days ago than a week. But let's see, maybe if I go back 10 days. But anyway, some interesting positioning. Yeah, I think this may have been it. August calls, and then I think there was also some September calls that we saw. Maybe it was this one here. Yeah, I think this was the trade I was referring to. The September 87.5 calls that went up. Opening trade that did increase open interest, I'm pretty sure. All right, so that's a couple things. I didn't talk too much about the Q's price action, but just like I talked about, like not being greedy in a couple of the single names, it's the same thing. Like, I'll give you an example of like how we use the indices during the day. Right. And again, this was not a big move, but for the day, just recognize where there's a little bit of short term. Again, this is not major resistance, but short term resistance is right there at 3379. So if you put on some trades in the morning, right, and we get up to here, just note that we're kind of butting into some resistance here. So, forget about like if it would be great if we go out and we take out the highs and so forth. But just, if you've got some trades on where you're up on an option play 25, 30%, take some off. Don't be super greedy right now. So that's my opinion on this stuff. Again, everything that we're going through, in these videos is always for information purposes only. Our risk disclaimer is here. So just so that there's no confusion. Also, I'll leave this video here for the night. But next week, the other thing is we will be going over. We had a great conversation earlier about option trading, right? How to basically strategies, like do you take stops with option trades or do you let them ride? We talked a lot, so what we're going to do next week is I will be doing a webinar for members, and we're going to be talking about option trading strategies, and I'll tell you some of the things that have worked for me over the last 4 or 5 years that I've been trading options as well as stock, right? So I don't just trade options. And there's reasons for that, and I'm going to get into that in the webinar. I also will talk about how position size is so important if you're trading options. That's another thing that is not talked about enough. Trust me, over the years, I've tried so many different option strategies. So before I kind of give away all of that, that'll be next week. and I hope that entices you to try out Tribeca Trade Group and see what it's like to be a member for a little bit. You won't be disappointed. Thanks very much, guys. Have a great night. See you tomorrow.